The central question new atheists fail to answer, and one that we put to Richard Dawkins in this interview here, is whether, irrespective of how scientifically true religion may or may not be, it is nonetheless both useful and inevitable. The Dawkins answer is as close to quoting Karl Marx's idea that religion is the opium of the masses as you can get without reproducing it verbatim.
The comfort that you get from believing a falsehood is like a drug, and it's a perfectly valid argument to say that there's everything to be said for the drug.
This is a persuasive argument in the sense that truth matters irrespective of how uncomfortable or impractical it may be. But the problem here is that the absence of old religion seems to produce only a vacuum into which a new religion rushes in. And this new religion has just as little regard for the truth as the old ones. That's why Richard Dawkins, who spent his best years arguing with creationists, is now increasingly forced to explain basic biological concepts like the inability to change your sex by incantation on national television. The reason new atheism has lost its mojo is that it has no answers to the lack of meaning and purpose that our post-Christian societies are suffering from. What will fill that void? Religious people have their answer. Do the rest of us?
Before I answer the argumentation, I first want to state that the argument that was presented in the video is very strong. The main reason why I say that is largely that sometimes, irrespective if somebody loses their religion, a person can be just as dogmatic as a religious person if they truly believe hard enough. Humans are prone to dogmatisms, so that's why sometimes we lash upon ideas that make no sort of sense whatsoever and that very few people, like myself included, don't necessarily buy. The question that the video poses is basically this: in the absence of the old religions and in place of the new religions, how exactly do we fight against this? The best way to basically fight against this is actually critical thinking classes and philosophy classes. Speaking from my own personal experience, I do in fact think that there's a lack of critical thinking classes and philosophy classes for elementary schools, middle schools, and high school students. And so by having these kind of classes, it allows people to question the stuff that they actually believe in and also to question ideas that other people have. My personal favorite philosopher is Aristotle. If we put someone like Aristotle in classroom, I think that people will become much more logical and actually think more clearly than to prone themselves to more dogmatisms. If we foster a culture of critical thinking, that will make people much more interested in finding out the truth for themselves. There are some social commentators that basically argue that basically Christianity is the best answer to against these ideas that we see right now. The problem in this argumentation, however, is the fact that you cannot fight dogma with more dogma. Let's take, for example, you go up to an anti-racist activist, you win the anti-racist activist with Jesus, right? I don't think that just because they substitute one drug, which is like the anti-racist ideas, to Christianity, that somehow they're a better person because they substitute one thing for the other. When you make the anti-racist activist go to Jesus, more or less, they also will have claims that they're not necessarily substituted, and moreover, that person will suffer psychologically for belief systems that might not be true, largely because hellfire can cause nightmares, it cause panic attacks. So how exactly are we making the person better by believing in this? Also, in terms of the argumentation to safeguard, it doesn't make any sort of sense in the political realm either, largely because although you can have a whole entire majority Christian country, the politicians will go against the interests of the people that live there, and so the subjects will be subjugated to the bad policies that live there. Additionally, there are Christians that will have these ideas in their churches too, so how exactly is a safeguard there as well? The best way to fight against this is to elect people that actually serve our interests, to foster a culture of critical thinking, to have philosophy classes in schools, and above anything else, not substitute one dogma for another dogma.